Thanks for sticking around. This is LA. I figured it'd be like a Dodgers game. Most people would be gone by the 6th inning. Yeah. So the topic of this conference is humanity versus technology, which I'm about to turn 50, so I don't know about you guys, but the image that comes to my mind is like the Matrix, like in the little battery cells, and that you're somehow having an adversarial relationship, or at the very least, my kids looking at their cell phones at the breakfast table and not looking at me, and that's to me what humanity versus technology represents. It's isolation. I mean, that's what we're really scared of, right? That even when I was little and you're watching television, the idea of the boob tube, you're kind of parked there, just zoned out, looking at this monitor. And I think that's kind of what the underlying fear is, especially for the older generation when it comes to tech. Every new wave of tech is exciting, but also there's the fear that something bad's going to happen, or it's going to somehow interfere with our life as we know it and dehumanize us in some way. So it's an interesting topic. The irony is that the storytellers that I look up to the most found the nexus point of humanity and technology. I just finished working on a project, Jungle Book, and it was Walt Disney's last film. What's interesting about Walt Disney is we think of him as an old-time filmmaker, but Steamboat Willie at the time, that was the first instance where they married a music track with picture, and people went crazy for it. It was a huge hit. Mickey Mouse became a celebrity, and eventually he did Snow White, which was the first feature-length animated film, using techniques like rotoscope and the beginnings of visual effects. When you marry up state-of-the-art technology with the old stories, the old myths, not only do you tend to do well in drawing an audience, but it seems to affect our culture in a way that's impactful and lasts for decades, if not more. George Lucas certainly made a big impression on me. He used that same formula. The old stories, the old myths combined with state-of-the-art tech, motion control, miniatures, the first CGI characters, and with Avatar with Jim Cameron as well. If it's done well, it could be really effective. In the case of George Lucas and Jim Cameron, they looked up a lot to Joseph Campbell, and I ended up researching his work because they were fans of his and I was fans of theirs. And he talks about the monomyth, about the job of the myth is first and foremost to hold a mirror up to nature, to show the world as it is. And because humans are aware of their own mortality, we have to come to terms with how we fit into this thing. It's kind of scary. It also gives us an opportunity to pass down the information that we have as the elders of the tribe to the younger people so they don't have to make the same mistakes. Or even to compress the cultural, collective memory and lessons to the next generation. It's really a compression technology mythology. You're able to take the small lucid points, gather them together, and present them to the young people. But if you have kids, young people don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear what the old people have to say. And so you need a little bit of magic, right? If you ever see Ricky Jay do up-close magic, it's phenomenal because he's a storyteller. He tells the story and then he punctuates it with a sleight of hand. If Yoda didn't pick up that X-Wing out of the swamp, I don't think Luke Skywalker would have cared about the Force. That's part of the deal. You got to do the magic trick. And technology is that magic trick. Now, I always was a bit of a Luddite when it came to CGI, to computer-generated imagery and effects. I always felt it was overused, and if you look at my work early on, I stayed away from it because I always felt it drew attention to itself. And first and foremost, as a storyteller, you want to keep people subjectively involved. You want to get them emotionally involved. And if they're looking at spectacle and going, wow, and they back off and look at each other, you lost them. You can't tell a good story. And so if you look back to Elf, one of the first films I did, I really stayed away as much as I could from CGI. I used stop-motion animation. I used forced perspective, hanging miniatures. In the beginning of the film, there were no visual effects that were digital at all. Here, I'll show you, I'll give you an example. This first little piece, you'll see forced perspective where you have two sets, somebody up front to look bigger, somebody in the back to look smaller, and a hanging miniature of a fire because you can't scale fire. So if you push that in the background, it would have showed our hand. And then after that, you'll see a clip with some stop motion animation.
Bye, guys.
Bye, buddy.
Bye, buddy. Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, buddy.
So everything in there is practical, including the sky.
Bye, buddy. Hope you find your dad.
Thanks, Mr. Narwhal. Bye.
I included that because I'm the narwhal.
Bye, buddy. Hope you find your dad.
Thank you. So at least you could say you saw that today. Okay. Then later on, I was engaged to do the live-action version of a new superhero that nobody had seen on the big screen yet, Iron Man. Now, at the time I did Iron Man, I was starting to trust the visual effects a little bit more. We had Stan Winston build practical suits of the Iron Man armor, but we knew we were going to have to allow him to fly, and there was going to be some CG. But what I learned over the course of the film, as we started to become more confident with the way that hard surfaces could be rendered, this is about 10 years ago, I started to trust it a little bit more and design shots in a way where they didn't draw attention to themselves, but instead the effects lent themselves to the emotional story we were telling. So you'll see in the first couple shots, we started by filming a real suit, but then we ended up replacing it digitally, and the last shot of the sequence is actually a fully practical suit, and I think you'll have a hard time telling the difference. I certainly did. So you can see the reflections are pretty convincing. We use real movement of a performer to inspire it, but this is all digital from what I remember. It's hard for me to remember if it's digital or practical with some digital augmentation, and this one's fully practical. So they all kind of lined up pretty well together. And so I began to trust more. Not just the technology, but also the artists that were in charge of how that technology was used. You see, you think computers do this stuff, but it's really artists. It's really people writing code and tools to present what the computers are capable of. It becomes a new set of tools for storytelling. But you have to develop a partnership with a growing rank of artists that have to all see things the same way. You see it with the animated films, like the Pixar films, where clearly it's a team of people. And as John Lasseter says, it's not computers doing this. It's like saying pencils did, keyframe animation. It's not the case. Those are just the paint set that you use. But it's the artists who understand movement and who breathe life into these things. So as I became more comfortable with this technology, the opportunity to do Jungle Book came up. Now, I grew up with Jungle Book. It was Walt Disney's last film. People have tremendous connection to the music, to the characters, and the story is mythic. It even predates the Kipling stories. The feral boy being raised by animals goes way back. It's a shared common myth. It's one of those Joseph Campbell specials. And anytime you see a story like that and the opportunity to use the new technology, I thought I would jump in with both feet. A lot of good work was being done with fur and being done with organic subjects, and I thought that with the help of MPC and with Weta, that there was an opportunity to present a story in a way that you couldn't at any time earlier. Now again, we're looking for the emotional crux of this piece, and we're going to let the technology follow behind. And it always starts with artists, and this image was one that was done by one of our artists, and we felt that this moment really captured the tone of the film. It was Mowgli saying goodbye to Raksha, who's voiced by Lupita Nyong'o, and they're saying goodbye, and the idea of an exaggerated but yet photorealistic wolf that's digitally rendered, coming in contact with the boy, saying goodbye, would be an emotional moment. But it's also a very difficult moment. Any of you who are familiar with computer-generated effects know that when you have interactivity, that's the most difficult thing to pull off. If you notice, especially with the older films, they would put the hand behind the CG figure. You never want to show something real interacting so directly with something fake. Not only that, but we're putting it front and center, and the scene was going to be in the rain. And we also had to worry about talking animals, because that could get you into the uncanny valley very quickly. And any of these things not just show your hand as a magician, but it also takes the people out of the emotional story. So here's the scene as it appears in the film. I want you to look especially at the moment when this image pops up and see if you could find it.
Maybe I can be of help. The boy's right. Maybe it's time he found another people.
No,
I'm the one who brought him to you, and now I'll return him to where he belongs.
I won't let you. He's my cub.
We knew this day would come.
We are the only family he's ever known.
Raksha. It's the only place he'll be safe.
It's okay, Ami. It won't go far. I'll come back and visit.
Never forget this. You're mine. Mine to me. No matter where you go, or what they may call you, you will always be my son.
So what I like about that is if I didn't tell you, your eye wouldn't have even gone to that hand, which means that you're following the story, which means that you're engaged. And that's the real job of a storyteller. It's not to rely on the tools and the tricks, but the best visual effects are the ones you don't see. It's not that I didn't like CGI. I didn't like bad CGI. The good CGI you don't see. And there's a lot of people working very hard to make sure that you don't see their work, which is counterintuitive, but that's the nature of what we do. And so, you know, every time I could get in front of a group of people, I just want to draw attention to the people who do all that work, because they work long hours, it's hard, and they're filmmakers too. And I'm going to show you a little bit about how they pulled it off. Rob Legato was our supervisor, and I just tasked them with, hey, how do we do this? How do we, you know, this is what I want. And you'll see the first, we do a little bit of a breakdown. It's quick. It's that last moment. You'll see that there's a puppet that has the right level of resistance so that the hand does the right thing. And you'll see we did something interesting to make it look like he's interacting with the fur. See, there's our reference. That's all we photographed. Everything else is digital. You see we actually have a CG hand that hopefully you didn't notice. But that's where we swap the decks out in the magic trick. And all of it, again, is to make the effect go away. And when people are moved, even though there's visual effects up there, that's when I think that we've done our job. Now, Andy Jones, who's the animator on this film, was going over to a VR lab called Weaver, a little studio in Venice, and we were in Playa Vista, and he was bringing some of the motion capture technicians with him because virtual reality and motion capture are very similar. They both have virtual cameras, there's volumes, there's sensors, there's tracking. It's kind of like a similar pipeline, except one's operating in the reverse of the other. One's capturing, the other one's displaying. And I asked if I could tag along. And it was the first time that I remember feeling something called presence. It's a very interesting word associated with virtual reality. It's the phenomenon of when you understand, when your prefrontal cortex understands that something's not real, but your limbic brain gets hijacked to believe it's real, so that you could be standing on a cliff and you could ask yourself to step off, and you know it's not real, but your brain is telling you, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. You're convinced. And it's a combination of technical parameters like low latency, high frame rate, good tracking. But the thing that's most important is that it tricks your brain and your mind, and emotionally, it tricks you into believing that something is so, and you get a very emotional response to it. I did an experience there called The Blue. I don't know if any of you have done that. It's a big blue whale. You're at the bottom of the ocean on a shipwreck, and a big blue whale swims by, and it's very moving. It's huge in scale, meant to inspire awe. In me, it made me scared. It took me about 2 times to do it because of the sounds in my ears, and my full, complete range of vision was taken over by this huge thing. And even though I knew it was fake, it was very intense to me. And after doing it a few times, I really enjoyed it. but I was very overwhelmed. And I looked at a lot of other experiences. And it stuck with me. I went home and I couldn't get it out of my mind. It was just too intense of an experience seeing this new technology and how effective it was. And I found that in the experiences I was seeing, there were one of two basic paths that were being gone down. One was the cinematic path, which was basically filmmaking, except you were immersed in the film. You couldn't interact really. You were kind of like on a dark ride, like on tracks going through it. You could see things. It was very overwhelming and beautiful, and it could be you could get a lot of emotional response, but there was no agency. You couldn't affect the story. It's very linear, like a movie. And then there are the game developers who are using VR, and there you have complete agency. You could do whatever you want. Some of them are open world. But they tend to fit into the structure of games, which are usually puzzles or shooters where you have to solve certain problems and move on and up into the next level and pass certain achievements. And I think for both those applications, VR is very exciting. But for me, I questioned, what did I want to experience? And the closest thing I could come up with was lucid dreaming. It felt like lucid dreaming to me, like being aware that you're dreaming and being able to do things like fly, interact. You know it's not real, but you're still enjoying the experience. And it feels like there's an internal logic to the world. And that stuck with me. And then I said, why is it with all these VR experiences, I want to take that headset off? I feel relieved when it's over. I want to do one where you feel welcome and that you don't want to go away, that you feel disappointed when you take the HMD off your head. And so I started to think, well, part of what made me feel scared was I was smaller than this thing. What if you're bigger? What if you're a little bit bigger than everything around you? That'll trick your brain. And what type of environment? A very pastoral, fairy tale fantasy world. I used to play Dungeons and Dragons. I loved reading The Hobbit, Tolkien's books, and create like a fantasy environment. And I remember that book, Gnomes, where they had all those little houses and their whole world described. And I thought, let's do something called Gnomes and Goblins, and let's have little creatures that you interact with in the forest. And let's see if we could create a relationship where it's the interactivity with the creatures that you're after. And it's like a sim, it's like a simulation, it's like a Dungeons and Dragons game where you feel like it's completely open world, but the fact is that the experience is curated for you by the storytellers and the artists and the people writing the code. And so I drew this picture of a goblin. Now you had to have very simple geo because you have to have light files. We were going to use a game engine, and so there was going to be not to get too technical, but because of the refresh rate in a room scale experience, and you want to have parallax so that you feel dimension and you feel a sense of spatial relationships, you want to have subjects in an environment that's not too heavy so that you can really do some nice finishing work to make it look photoreal. And so we started off with the simplest little guy that I could come up with that has a sense of personality. And again, an artist drawing, in this case it's charcoal, is making you feel that you're seeing a bunch of circles and triangles, but hopefully you feel a connection to the personality of this little guy. And so I showed it to everybody at Weaver, and we were very excited, and Andy Jones, my animator, was going to work with me, and we started modeling this thing out. Now, if you know anything about animation, there's a layout phase, or in filmmaking, there's previs, where you go from pencils and drawings that are full of emotion, and you get into these models, and the models lose their soul. It's very hard to watch the movie in that form. And of course, when we first started with this, we had the same problem. It lost all of that personality. But because VR has certain opportunities that a lot of people haven't explored yet, we found something interesting. Because you're wearing the headset, the computer always knows where your head is. And because you have wands in your hands, it knows where your hands are. And so you could extrapolate where the eyes of the subject is. And we found that just by simply tracking his eyes to your eyes, something kind of interesting happened. Now, this is an early model and an early test, but it was the first moment of promise where you start to see him following you around. And he started to feel like there's somebody in there. It's the beginning of the Turing test, where you could become fooled that you're looking at something. Now, it's not perfect, but there was enough of a spark of inspiration right there, that we felt that it was interesting. And now Andy Jones continued to refine the model and started to add other aspects like him looking at you, blinking, checking out your body, your hands. This reminds me, my wife it doesn't remind me of my wife. It reminds me, my wife loves our 3 dogs and likes to carry treats around, and they look at her just like this. Right? Such anticipation, right? And there, look at that. There we go. So, yeah, right? There's something different there that's starting to happen. And we got very excited. And we started to put all of our energy into the behavior of the creature. We have beautiful environments, but we started really getting into the AI. How much could we make this thing react? Not like in a game, where if he wants the nut, you throw the nut, you get it, and you go to the next level. But it's how you approach him. I used to have birds as pets when I was little. When you first have a pet bird, you have to be very careful not to put your hands near it. They get very scared. You have to slowly work your way towards them. And when you do, they start to trust you. You start to give them treats. They start to get closer until eventually you make a bond and there's a connection. I wanted to have that too. I wanted to have there to be a progression of the relationship based on your behavior towards the creature. And this is something that people aren't used to. So when people first try it, they run over to the thing, it runs away, they say, I don't know how to play the game. But if you are careful and start to develop trust, we built, there are things called state machines where you're able to keep track of how the creature is feeling towards you based on things that you've done. And so all of our effort went into creating these AI parameters. And so I'm going to show you a little bit of, now this is just a little segment of a preview, but you start to get the sense of how he operates in the environment. There he is. And now this is one of the earlier encounters. He's checking you out. You're getting close. He doesn't like it. He splits, right? So those are your hands. That's how you see your hands in VR. So now he gets to know you a little bit better. He's watching your hands. He's coming up to you. He trusts you a little bit more. He's not running, but he's kind of backing away. And now he's curious about you. But he's keeping his distance. Now there you got an acorn that you could pick up. And he won't take it from you, but now you're kind of making a friend, right? And then eventually, well, he really likes that peach. So eventually now, he's letting you know by looking at the peach, looking at your hand, looking at your eyes, and you pick up the peach, and he wants that thing. And now he trusts you a little bit more, and you're going in there slow, and he'll take it from you. There we go. So everything we're doing in the world is geared towards developing a relationship. Now, how does this relate back to the topic? Well, at first it seems a little bit scary. When you see VR, it's scary because people are wearing, their faces are covered, their ears are covered, and they seem to be lost in this, it's like they're offline. And they're interacting, they're having emotional connections to computers, and you're out of the real world. But what I would say is it's like when you look at a painting that's hundreds of years old, but yet you see what the artist was feeling and wanted you to feel through the medium of paint. And with an experience like this, you're seeing what the story we're trying to tell you. We're trying to make you feel a certain way. You're seeing the people who spent all the weeks and hours coding, getting his behavior just right, the character design, the lighting, all of those things. This is a whole group of people who worked for a year just to get this little experience going. And they're curating an experience for you. And so you're really connecting with the storyteller, like within a movie. And I think that, the whole humanity versus technology thing, you start to see that there's an opportunity here to create greater connectivity, because the kids that are walking around on those phones, they're not looking at the phones, they're talking to their friends in real time. I used to go to summer camp, you get a pen pal, you write them 1 or 2 letters. My kids are talking all the time to the kids they met in summer camp, and all the friends that they meet at the parties and people at school. So really when they're walking around, they're just ignoring you, not people. And as we get used to this phenomenon, we start to see that technology offers opportunities. Yeah, we should be vigilant, and there are a lot of smart people who are warning about what could happen with AI, and I don't mean to discount that. And we do have to pay close attention to that. But I think to be scared of technology in general and be a Luddite, and not to embrace these opportunities that might actually make us more human and more connected, Because when you think of humanity versus technology, you got to think of the root of the word versus, which is the Latin for to turn towards something, to face something. So it's humanity facing technology and taking on that challenge, and the storytellers out there to imbue what we're doing with technology with even more humanity, because it might lead to greater interconnectivity, greater empathy, and greater community. Thank you.